Greetings, just a little bit of a heads up. This video was completely impromptu, unplanned. I happened upon a stream by the gentleman Wheat Waffles. Originally he had someone else planned. He was going to debate somebody. I happened to be there and I voluntarily jumped in so he could have a conversation, and it is uploaded on his channel, and he gave me permission to upload it on this channel as well. So in this talk, we talk about basically looks, the effect of looks on pretty much everything, mostly about dating, that sort of thing. So not really my regular content, but I figured since I had done the talk, might as well check it out. And so here it is. Again, unplanned, impromptu. I'm really tired, but enjoy.
Awesome.
Okay.
Right, finally great to get going. Sorry about that huge delay, guys. We're supposed to be having a debate with another dating coach. I'm sure you've heard of him before. He's called James Tusk. I've done another live stream with him previously, and he's well in depth in like the red pill sphere. And despite like his obvious like high attractiveness for himself, he still believes that his game and all other things to do with the red pill, such as status and earning money and things like that, are more important. But he's like just done a no-show for whatever reason. Hasn't messaged me even though we planned it. So now we're just going to go on the fly. But thankfully, last minute, I've had another YouTuber called Thinking-Ape step in. If you've not seen his content, he gets consistently getting over 10,000 views per video. He's got quite a strong audience following him. I'm not sure how many subscribers he has, but he
As currently about 72,000.
So 72,000. Well, that's even bigger than me. So if anything, I'm the guest for your show, not the other way around. Anyway, thanks for coming onto the show last minute. I know you said that you wanted to get me on your channel anyway, but it's good that you can finally come onto mine, because I know that a lot of our beliefs align quite significantly anyway. I've seen you talk quite a lot about black pill in your own content. I've not watched a huge amount of your videos. I know you've got
it's fine. I'm
hundreds
an old guy.
and hundreds of videos, but I've at least watched enough to know that we do see eye to eye in terms of a lot of opinions. So without further ado, I know you had a couple of questions lined up from me anyway. So do you want to just start with the first one?
Yeah. So I guess the first question I'd have to ask, because it is, how did you realize the all importance of looks? It seems so obvious in retrospect oftentimes, but given the fact there's so much pushback and resistance with people when there's what's his name? I just call him Bathrobe Guy, Hamza, right? Hamza.
Yeah,
Or,
Hamza.
I call him Bathrobe Guy because he's always sitting there with his his hairy chest and whatever. There's a lot of pushback against that. And I'm curious how you came across that and just realized, well, this is pretty much the most important thing there is, and other things are less important.
If I'm honest, you said about Hamza. I've watched. He's one of my top 5 content creators that I consistently watch, so I can actually say a fair amount about his content. If I'm honest, he's not as far away from black pill as a lot of guys would think. In the respect that he does accept almost entirely the belief that the black pill holds of the importance of looks. I've watched a lot of his content, and I can safely say that he believes very much that looks is the most important thing in dating. But obviously the main difference that you'll see from my content to his content is that he very much believes in the flexible aspects of looks, such as going to the gym. He's very huge on that. That's one of his fundamental pillars that he talks about on his channel in terms of building an aesthetic body. Meanwhile, obviously my channel, and I'm guessing so your channel as well, believes more in line with the inflexible factors of look, such as your height and your face and your ethnicity and so on. But I do think that Hamza, me and him do cross over somewhat. However, I do want to make one point about Hamza, because I'm a little bit confused, because in my most recent debate with him, he was trying to use himself as an example of why the red pill is effective. He said that he went from some unattractive, low-value guy in his teens when he was, so he was overweight. Well, not overweight, but 20% plus body fat. And then he blossomed, obviously, into a person who's decently above average looking, and then he was able to get results from there. Yeah, he's no Chad, but I think it's he gets enough to respect to warrant a 6.
Yeah.
However, like one important point of information that I think was vastly overlooked is the fact that he went. I believe he said he went from 5'7" when he was in school in his teenage years. Bearing in mind he was 18, most guys max out their height by the time they're 18. If not, like
Yep.
at very most, they'd have like an extra like 0.5 inches in the locker.
I was
Like
done at 17. I'm only 5'8". I was done at 17. So
yeah, I haven't grown in height in 2 years, and I'm 20 years old. So that just shows. But he went. I don't even know how this happened. He went from 5'7" to 6'1" after the age of
Right.
18, and he was like he didn't even really talk about that much in the debate. He was mainly talking about
Well, he
how
did mention it recently because I want to bring this up. I don't know if you're aware. He went on a show. I call him Chad Williamson. I'm joking, right? But Chris Williamson, he's a pretty big YouTuber, close to 300,000 subs. He's basically a Chad. He was on Love Isle. For some reason, and I can't really figure out why, Chris Williamson wanted to talk to him. You were mentioned several times by name. In fact, they wanted for Chris to get you on for a more sort of black-pilled, realistic perspective. But I thought it was a bit outrageous because Hamza claimed that he has converted you to the red pill in that towards the end of that discussion, and I wasn't. I think it was a misinterpretation, basically. And what that was about, basically, and I thought it was important to bring it up if I'm going to talk to you anyway, was basically that we all agree that losing body fat is probably the best thing you can do. I mean, there's nobody really debates that. And so he was using that from an angle of, well, he actually agrees with me, lifting weights is the best thing to do. When in reality, body fat will hide your facial features. So you want to lose, maybe if you can, which is going to be hard for a lot of 10, 12%. Okay. Then your facial features will be best revealed. If you go way below that, which is hard as fuck, you're going to look gaunt and kind of skeletal. And so it's basically, but for some reason he was representing it as you had converted over to the sort of gym rat red pill belief, which was really odd. I'd recommend you checking the video out, because they did mention, or he mentioned you by name. Yeah.
Yeah, I will have a look at that because that is interesting. Like, just so people are like absolutely clear about what my opinion on is like body fat percentage and the whole like gym, like how effective is it? Like so it's a bit of like it'll be like a little bit difficult to explain, but it will eventually get there and it will eventually make sense. So if you're a guy with a normie tier face or above, then lowering your body fat percentage and hopefully also getting a aesthetic body will be next to crucial, like in terms of maximizing your chances and results. Like if you're a normie tier face, you just can't afford really to be slim or, God forbid, like high body fat percentage, because it will send you like into the depths of like having having no chances at all. But if you're already a 3, like I've shown examples, like I've shown screenshots in my videos of guys who were overweight before, but they were clearly still lacking facially, like, or maybe they were bald or something like that as well. And then even after they lost weight and even after they got a gym body, they were still unattractive after that. So it doesn't really help them. But I've always said in my videos that if you're a normie, like you are in the most flexible tier, like by far out of any of the categories of men. Because if you're a sub 5, then there's not much you can really do because your looks is the main limiting factor. But if you're a Chad, then your looks is the main, like, it carries the most amount of weight. It's like it's doing most of the heavy lifting for your like attention from women. So your other factors don't really make much of a difference either. But if you're a normie, bearing in mind that like most other normies are just going to be like regular, if you're able to, go from like a 40% guy, like a top 40% guy to a top 20% guy, which means that you're overtaking 20% of the other normies through maximizing your SMV by going to the gym, and you're able to pretty much maximize all of your other factors, such as your social skills and everything like that, then that can lead to much of a difference. But for a Chad or a sub 5, none of those things are really going to matter that much because as I said earlier, like your looks is doing like the most amount of work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most extreme example would be, someone I've seen them on YouTube, by the way, gym cells, whatever, gym rats, we used to call them back in the day. I'm old. Someone asked how old I'm in my mid-40s, just for the record. Been around for a while. But if you have a recessed jawline, for example, you could go to the gym till you're blue in the face. I mean, nothing's going to save you then. I mean, there's just not much you can do about that. And I think my sense from Hamza, I don't really watch his content to be honest. I watched one or two videos with his nice bathrobe and the conversation he had with Chris Williamson. Maybe he's coming around to the idea that it's not for everyone. Because the other interesting thing in that conversation, which is why I'd recommend you check it out, was towards the end, maybe the last 15 minutes, they were acknowledging that maybe a lot of the stuff they talk about self improvement isn't applicable to everyone. Maybe there's a category of men, something like that. It's just not applicable to. Because yeah, if you're an average guy, between 4 and a 6, there's some mobility there. But I think that where a lot of the sort of, I guess, self-improvement type people get it wrong is they're not willing to make those concessions or those acknowledgments. I mean, there's some people that, it sucks. They just can't be helped, at least in that respect. I mean, the height pill, right? If you're, I mean, here's the thing I've often wondered with some of these guys. I call them gurus because I do think that Hamza is yeah, he actually in the interview said he'd like to be a cult leader. That's why I'm not exactly particularly trusting of the individual. But here's the thing. I'd like to them to run an experiment for the sake of all of us, for the audience. Get some guy who's 5'6", premature balding, bad face, but is in good shape. He's in good shape. Maybe you can put on a little bit of muscle, and see how much mileage they can get out of that guy. Take him under their wing for a year. Updates. Honest updates. I would love to see that social experiment to see if all the BS these guys spew, which I think it is mostly BS, is actually going to work. Because I'm almost willing to bet significant amounts of money that a guy who's, say, 5'6" and balding with poor facial structures, even if he's in great shape, isn't going to have nearly the same amount of success as these guys. And it'd be a really easy experiment to run. And if the rest of us are wrong about that, well, it would prove us wrong, once and for all. Like, wow, this really worked. If they're, being honest about it. But they rarely do these things. And well, they rarely admit stuff like that. I definitely think there's some serious hard limits. And the muscular body thing, I used to be a gym rat when I was younger. Ever since the lockdown stuff, I really haven't gone. Um, yeah, I mean it can help. It can help a little bit,
No, I think
but
only if you're, to a decent level, like to begin with. Like if you're,
yeah,
that's like my main point. That if you're a normie tier, then all of the other things that the red pill teaches, can have like quite a big of an impact. Like I've heard this phrase before, like from some guy in the comments. He said that sub fives is black pill, normies is red pill, and then chads is black pill as well. Like I've heard quite a lot of phrases like that. There's another one that's been floating around for quite a while. They say that like the first 10 seconds of an interaction with a woman is just pure black pill. It's all black pill there. But then the next anything between the first 10 seconds and the next day or like even couple of weeks really is all red pill. Like that's when if you're able to get through those first 10 seconds, then that is when a lot of the like red pill strategies and like in applying game will come into play a little bit more. Not necessarily to improve your chances, but I'd say more so just to reduce the chance of your ability of things progressing not collapsing. Because I see some guys who they were given like a fair amount of a chance to begin with, but just because they completely blew it in either on the day or the following days, then the interaction ends up like falling apart. And then the last step that people talk about, they say that anything after like a couple of weeks, when you're consistently dating a woman and eventually in a relationship, they'll say that that's like where the blue pill like comes into play. So pretty much the phrase is like the first 10 seconds is black pill, the second stage, which is like 10 seconds to 2 weeks, is red pill, and then the last, anything beyond that, is a blue pill. Do you think there's an element of truth to that?
well, yeah, maybe. I think the most important point there to be made is that there's a threshold, right? The first 10 seconds. I mean, this is one thing that these guys need to acknowledge, the guys who are pushing, self-improvement, what have you. You need to pass the threshold, right? If you're a 3, I mean, you're not going to pass the threshold. The flexibility, the wriggle room, all that stuff you mentioned, that only comes into play within a certain. I mean, you've talked about this before, I believe, in your videos, right? at least I think you have, that if you're a 3, forget it, you're screwed. If you're a 9, it doesn't matter what you say, they're going to be interested. And when you're a 5, when you're a 5 or a 6, yeah, game or using psychological tricks, and maybe that'll play some role. But again, I kind of came here to listen originally, so my idea was I thought you were going to actually debate one of these gurus. I just get annoyed that they're not willing to admit that there's a threshold. And the reason why, I mean, I think this is ultimately the reason why I think this is the case. In your case, I think I haven't, as far as I'm aware, you do some pretty good facial ratings. I've seen some comments about it. There's only so much you can sell, right? An individual, right? Okay, here's your facial rating. Here's what you can do. End of story. But with the self-improvement stuff, there's an endless. I mean, really, there's an endless story you can build up there. You can do this and that. Then what Hamza loves to do is talk meditation, all this other crap that really has almost nothing to do with attracting women. And that's kind of my big issue in general with a lot of the self-improvement business. For the record, I think if an individual's never self-improved, they should at least try it, depending on their circumstances. But it's just, I really feel it's, I mean, a grift. YouTube is a grift by its very nature on some level, right? But there are degrees of grifting, really. I think that when this endless self-improvement game of always trying to quote unquote get to the next level, I mean, that really sounds like a grift to me. And it's because it doesn't sell as well as just saying, okay, you're 5.5, here's what you can do, go on your merry way, right? Or you're 6, but you're only 5'5". Well, it happens to be the case that in Ecuador, the average height of a male is 5'4". So you'd be okay there. Why don't you go there and do some geomaxing, right? That kind of stuff doesn't sell. It doesn't sell because it kind of quote unquote takes hope away from people. I think arguably it's more realistic, but also you can't just endlessly recycle it like the way you can with the BS you'll hear from a lot of these self-improvement guys.
So I've just thought of a really good point. So, and I think it encapsulates what you've just been talking about, like, very, very accurately. So I think in general, when people are looking for solutions to a problem, like any problem, they're looking for 3 things. They're looking for cheap, they're looking for easy, and they're looking for effective. And in my opinion, the red pill ticks all 3 of those boxes, but the black pill doesn't. So for the red pill, like, the advice that they give, it's cheap. Like, a lot of it is just, you need to, like, buy this stuff, like, buy this small like this grooming product. Like, a lot of these red pill channels will have this like they'll get sponsors from these male grooming packages, and then they'll advertise them there, and like people just think, oh, if I just buy this hair product or this aftershave, then I'll be able to like pursue all of my dreams, and like all the women will now flock to me. Like, and bearing in mind, these products are only priced at $50 or under, like, it ticks that box. Meanwhile, when you compare to the black pill, which is saying, yes, you need to spend thousands of dollars on either this surgery if you're in this position, or if you're in this position, then potentially you may need to move abroad to another country where the average height is lower. People, shy away from that. They think, do I really want to be spending thousands of dollars? That's a bit too out of my price range. I don't really want to look at that for a solution. Meanwhile, I think the red pill applies to most guys, because most of the solutions that they offer, like all of the soft looks maxing stuff, or like even learning game, that's like pretty much a free pass. Like, most of the content out there for learning game is free. It's all up there on YouTube. But even the things that are actual products are relatively cheap. Like, you're talking like under $50 for each one. So that's like the first pillar, the cheap side of it. And the second one is how easy it is. Again, like, this is a similar sort of situation. Most people like are drawn to the red pill because they're taught it's fairly easy. They think, right, I all I have to do is XYZ, and the like what will it, like, you're able to predict what will end up happening. Like, I actually it reminds me of my very first video. I actually talked about this, that out of the 3 pills, the blue pill, the red pill, the black pill, each stage gets progressively more difficult. It understands that women's standards go up and up and up. And if anyone's not seen my first video before, I pretty much make a tier list of how important each, like, different factors are in terms of, like, how the pills believe them. So, for example, the blue pill would say that, like, in S tier, like the top tier, the most important factor will be your personality. But then all of the others, they don't really matter that much. Like, you know, for your face, it's going to be like a D. For your body, it's going to be like a D. They don't really matter that much. Meanwhile, the red pill, that's like, that understands that women's standards are higher than what the blue pill originally laid out. They think that you do need to have a little bit more value to the table. So they'll say that your body now becomes an A, your game becomes an S tier. Like, so everything like goes up in, you know, like to a higher direction. Meanwhile, the red pill will still say, oh, but your face, it doesn't really matter that much. It's like probably a B or a C tier, or, you know, like your height, it doesn't really matter that much either. Like, it's probably a B or a C tier. Meanwhile, the black pill steps up one more time. So the final stage steps up again. It says that, like, let me make this point clear, that the black pill doesn't reject the importance of body or your like grooming. They still are highly regarded, like they're still important, but it also moves everything else up to the top tiers as well. So now on the black pill, like pretty much every single factor that you can name will be like, need to be like check marked to, in order to like be able to impress like the women like to a level where they will want to date you, because you will need to have the face, you will need to have the height, you will need to have the body, you will need to have everything. So the black pill realizes that the standards that women have are the highest. So to go back to the original point, in terms of easiness, the black pill looks the least appealing, because it says, hold on, like being able to date as a guy, like in the 21st century, like it's hard. Like you need to be able to tick all of these boxes. You need to be, you know, pretty much having everything to be able to get an average woman or your looks match. The red pill says it's much easier than that. It says that you only need a handful of things. And finally, the last pillar, I'm getting to the end of it. So we have cheap, we have easy, and then the last one is effective. And now this is where the black pill again like falls flat, because which is why people aren't drawn to it, because the black pill says that most of the so-called solutions that are out there aren't really that effective. They don't like they won't do much for you. It might not make necessarily a amount of change to your dating life. Meanwhile, the red pill, everything that they teach is like something that's supposed to be easy to fix, or if not easy to fix, it will take a certain amount of work, and eventually within 6 months or a year of like say working out at the gym is going to you know, be able to like warrant your ability to attract women. So that's pretty much my point. I might actually end up using that in a video, because I can't believe I've just thought that right off the top of my head there, but I might use that in a video because it's an interesting point that like the three main things that why people are drawn to the red pill and more to and less to the black pill is the fact that the red pill is like in all three categories, easier, cheap, and effective, is more appealing than the black pill. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, quite a lot. I've been on YouTube for over 10 years, so I've said this over the years, pretty much the same thing. Because before the sort of latest iteration of these, I call them gurus, came about, there used to be sort of the PUA types, the older types. I'm not going to name them by name. There's one guy, you probably don't know him since you're significantly younger. He actually sells a product he's a red pill guy, sort of red pill guru, called Tactical Soap. And he claims this tactical soap, for example, has pheromones in it.
Is that who is it? What's his name? Richard Cooper.
Yeah,
Jesus
right.
Christ. Can I just like I'll let you carry on, but like, I just want to give a little bit of perspective for the audience. Like I've heard about his product, and if I'm honest, like when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, fair enough. Like he's selling soap, like, you know, it's a little bit of a side hustle. He's trying to make a bit of money. But then I clicked on his page, and there's something ridiculous, like selling at $100 for a pack of 5 for this soap or something stupid. And I'm like, soap? Like, I don't care. Like, it better have... The only thing that could make that soap worth $100 for a 5-pack is if each of them had like $15 worth of notes inside each one. So then, you know, that would get your money back. But I could not justify what's going on in that person's mind, or any person's mind who's buying that, who thinks that paying $100 for just some soap is going to make a change to their life. Like, soap is, you know, you can pick up soap for like £5-10. Not even that. Like, it shouldn't be $100.
There's a sucker born every minute, as they say. And I mean, this is a good example of grift and the kind of stuff that I agree with you. I mean, I've said this over the years, that if you offer people the possibility of what I'd argue is kind of infinite flexibility, you do this, you change your body language, you say the right thing. There's the sort of the beta bucks aspect, you know, money maxing. You know, this is all really plausible. But I think the difference, if I believe you that maybe Hamza isn't, exactly on that wavelength. The reason why a lot of the other guys might have a different perspective is I think it's an age thing. I mean, I'm not trying to hide my age. I'm in my mid 40s. I've been around for a while. I'm an average looking guy. I think at my very, very best, although I'm probably only a 5 now, because I gained some weight over the lockdown. Probably was a 6, whatever. I was a gym rat, 5'8". There's nothing special about me. But I'm not making this up. In the 90s, in the mid late 90s especially, I mean, or even the early 2000s, it was possible for an average guy to have a decent amount of success. I'm not claiming I never have been a Chad, but it wasn't that hard. And the issue, I think, is a lot of I've kept up, with the news. If I had to, let's say I could take my best shape ever, I probably reached it something like I was 27. I was the leanest, most muscular, whatever, right? And I had to transport myself to the current, I call it the dating meta to borrow some gaming language. I probably would struggle. I have to honestly admit that because the times have changed. And a lot of these guys, the dating coaches, the people who are pushing the red pill self improvement, are not trying to take account of the fact that the meta really has changed. It's not the same thing. I'll be the first one to say in 1997, it's before a lot of it was. I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was a lot easier. You can meet girls. You went to university, whatever. It wasn't a big deal. The internet had barely taken off, so an average guy had some chance. Obviously not as much as a Chad. That's always been the case, but this is, I think, really the perspective these guys are coming from. They're thinking in terms of basically an older paradigm, right? And so that you have that, and on top of that, a lot of these guys, I think, are just dishonest actors who are just trying to manipulate people. And you combine those two aspects, and you end up with a really, really nasty combo, because I think guys are being unnecessarily manipulated, and and the worst thing of it is these guys are going through an experience on a day-to-day basis. If you're in your early 20s, you're a teen, you know what the dating and mating market is like these days. It's not like it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. I can observe. I have a lot of contacts with young people. It is different, and it's different to the point where average guys, to a large degree, have no chance whatsoever if they're going to be in a Western country. For a lot of the reasons I've watched a whole bunch of your videos, not all of them. You cited, women. You made videos about sort of women's inflated ego. It's almost all due to social media, right? But I'll go outside and I'll see some terrible max looks matches, especially online. You see a lot of that. I see this one pattern just no matter where I go, where I see some average looking guy who's a normal weight, and I live in a country in the European continent, and I'll see some really fat woman who is technically a 4 or something, right? Maybe she lost weight, she'd be a 5. I see this go on and on, this pattern repeat itself. So I think a lot of this stuff. I don't know how old the gentleman you were going to debate was, the Chad guy.
Oh, he's
James
like
Tusk.
30 or 31. He's
Okay, so he's a little bit. So he probably missed. I don't. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint the exact point in time when this great transition from average guys still had a chance to you're just basically screwed. It might have been probably somewhere past 2016, maybe. I mean, it started before that. I tried out online dating, and it was back in the mid 2000s, something like that. It was kind of hit or miss, but it probably really took off and got really bad starting maybe at least 2015, 2016, and now we're here where we're now. A lot of these guys kind of missed the boat. I know there was one guy that you had rated, and you gave him a really poor rating, and he got all upset and butthurt about it. I think I forgot who he was. I don't remember the name, but he was older too. So I think a lot of this is a miscommunication and a lack of realization on the part of guys who are older. I mean, if you're already in your 30s, then the meta you were operating in, it wasn't quite as easy as the meta I was operating in when I was young, but it still was different than the current meta if you're 20, 19, 21, whatever. It's a very different meta. And I think these guys, I don't want to acknowledge it either because they're ignorant, I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, or they really just want to manipulate people and keep the grift going. And just as you pointed out, it's a lot more it's easier. It's easier to keep the red pill grift than just saying, look, Geomax and get facial surgery or something. I mean, or if you're short, that's pretty much all you could do. I mean, there's some operations where they break your bones. I wouldn't recommend that, but it's just it's just harder because
Yeah.
the reality is your genes. I mean, I always joke around. How do you get successful in life in general? You choose the right parents, right? And it's just true. I've seen this. I've just seen this again throughout my life. And I mean, I don't want to. I know that you primarily focus on looks. I want to go on a little related tangent. This is true of all sorts of talents. I've seen people that just were lucky. They just had really good talent in whatever subject, and they just took off, right? And other people didn't. And this is just a reality that we have to face. It's much better to face that reality and try to navigate around that, and not living in total denial than just pretending. I mean, it's when I mean, no necessary disrespect to Hamza. I look at some of the comments, and he did say in that video he wants to be a cult leader. Well, frankly speaking, some of his audience sound like cultists to me, you know, and that can't be good for them. I mean, because if you're going to be chasing something you're never going to reach, what's really the point? I mean, people. Here's another thing about gym maxing. I know from firsthand experience when people go to the gym for vanity reasons. They don't go because of health or anything like that. Once that evaporates, I mean, I guarantee you. Hamza said this in a video I watched, one of the few videos I watched. He said he goes to the gym to get chicks. Okay, sure. I mean, I don't know. I just wish there were a little bit more honesty. And Hamza is reasonably young. I don't know how young he is, so
I
he
think
knows.
he's 25. He's either
Okay.
25 or 26.
Okay, so he knows that the current dating meta is different. He knows that it's not as easy as it used to be. But I mean, I think a lot of these other guys, even if they're in their 30s, it was still easier back then. Put it this way, this is my opinion. Each year we move forward. We're now in early 2022. Each year we move forward, it gets harder and harder and harder. Why? Because social media grows ever more and more and more. So you get the more inflated female egos. You get more guys that are average guys that are marginalized, and so it goes. So it's kind of it's kind of like escape philosophy. We're just sort of like moving ever further. And apart from the suggestions you make, I just think the best general suggestion is get an honest assessment of where you stand, and what you want to do with that. I know it's really hard for young guys to conceive, and I'm not just doing this to be patronizing at all, but it does get older when you get better when you get older, because basically, your libido does, what you feel at 45 is not what you feel at 25 or 20. I mean, I don't know if that's cold comfort, but it does get somewhat easier if you're like constantly plagued by these thoughts, right? But I do think that barring surgery, losing body fat seems to be the only thing you can do. I guess get a decent. I mean, there are things you can do. For example, there's certain kinds of haircuts you might get. Let's say you have your hair is okay, but you have a bad hairline. There are haircuts you could I guess apply to sort of manipulate that to create an illusion, right? But yeah, I think the younger generation needs more people like you who are just saying, look, this is the deal. I'll give you a face rating. Here's what you can work with. Rather than all this peripheral stuff like the Hamza about meditation and keeping lists of your things, and it's just what's really the point?
Yeah. I'll just jump in there because you've said a few points that I wanted to speak about. So before I'll forget them, I'll just try and cover my opinions on each of them. So I remember you saying that why the red pill is still fairly prominent, and I agree with you that a lot of the red pill coaches are often run by surprisingly older guys, some of the biggest red pill channels such as Rollo Tomasi and Richard Cooper, they're definitely in their 40s. They might even be in their 50s.
No, they are in their 50s. Actually,
they're in their 50s. Oh, okay, they're in their 50s. Yep. And you listed two reasons why they still have a large amount of prominence, and in fact they're dominating the the voice on YouTube in terms of the way women react with men. And you listed 2 points, and I agree with both of them. It's partially because of the red pill grifters' own delusion in terms of what they think, how they think that the dating market is playing out right now. As I said, most of these guys are older, and as you talked about, when they were younger, like what worked for them might not necessarily work now. Like, and it's almost like as if they just don't have the perspective to know that dating is completely different now. That with the introduction of online dating, Instagram, looks is like becoming more and more and more important. There's no denying that, and these platforms being put in place hasn't also just increased the importance of looks, but it's increased the ability for the guys at the top to monopolize over the dating market completely. Because I've talked about this before in a video that in a like small society, or before the time of social media and phones and the internet and computers, a Chad, like even if he's by far the best guy in a small town or in a city, he can only like spread so far. Like he can only do so much. He can only have so much impact. Like he might know 10 women in his social circle, and they're all going to be simping over him. But meanwhile, like nowadays, that same Chad can have control over like double digits, if not triple digits, of women who are all just like swooning over him, and like he's matched with all of them on Tinder, and he's seen like a vast majority of them. So the fact that this is happening, like I remember seeing something about like the Gini coefficient, and that over time as economies develop, this is a similar like related point, but I'm going to try and tie it back to the dating market, that over time the Gini coefficient, which measures how much inequality there is in an economy, it expands over the time. And I think we're seeing a similar thing in the dating market, where before it was more of a level playing field. Like of course it was never a perfect level playing field. Like the Chads always had an edge over the average guys, who always had an edge over the bottom guys, but then even the average guys like still had a decent chance. But now we're seeing the Chads are like doubling up. They're being able to completely monopolize, and all of the guys in the middle are losing out, and the guys at the bottom, well, they're pretty much excluded altogether. So I think it's partially the reason why the red pill is like still dominating the YouTube like market is because of their own delusion. They can't see the fact that the dating market is a lot different now. They can't see, as you say, the meta has changed. And second point that you touched upon as well, and this I would say has an equal amount of significance, is the I think a lot of the red pill grifters, they're just trying to milk the cow for as long as they possibly can. Because I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if a lot of these red pill guys, the ones who run these YouTube channels, they know what they're talking is a load of BS. They know that the system has changed now. They know what their solutions are won't have an impact for most guys. But like if they have to just sell a few lies on their channels in order to make a few $100,000, why not? Like surely they want to do that. That sounds quite appealing, rather than getting a 9-to-5 job and working that for like 20k 30k a year. So it makes perfect sense in that respect. Like it honestly wouldn't surprise me if a lot of these guys are like just flat out lying to men, and you can just see that from like the deceptiveness and manipulation that they use in their marketing strategies. Like they will, I've seen on their websites, they'll say there's a time limit on how long you'll have the sale for if you don't click now. Like these are manipulative marketing strategies, which shows that they're coercing young guys into spending like ridiculous amounts of money just to try and give them some hope, when in reality it's all just like trying to sell like this grift so they can keep milking the cow for as long as possible.
May I add a note here? You mentioned Rollo Tomassi. I mean, he's regarded as sort of the godfather of the red pill. He's well into his 50s, married, has an adult child, as far as I'm aware. He's kind of adopted to some degree. He never talks about black pill, but his philosophy, he will cite this sort of 80-20 rule, and how 80% of men are unattractive to women, and blah blah blah. But the way he's sort of positioned himself, and he'll still talk about old order thinking. Like if you think that the way it is now with dating is the way it used to be, that's sort of old order thinking. But he'll claim, for example, I've heard him many times say that this top 20%, right, the Chads, the guys who get the women, that this is kind of an open category. You can enter it and leave it. So he never talks about looks, for example. He has talked some of these very vague, nebulous terms, and so in theory, according to him, and I think it's part of his marketing device, because he can't completely ignore the influence of social media. He talks about it, but he'll also say things along the lines of, well, you can enter into that top 20%, and you can ascend and you can descend too. That's what he'll say. You can also lose access to that. But in the case of others, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I mentioned the tactical soap. I mean, who really believes that's going to work? Obviously, Richard Cooper doesn't believe that tactical soap is going to work. I mean, so that's absolutely a huge factor. And yeah, I don't blame them. There are other people kind of adjacent. You ever heard of a channel called Charisma on Command, for example?
Yes, I have.
It's
Oh yeah,
God's awful, man.
he's not in the he's not very like much in the dating sphere, but he's more in terms of
Well,
just like just social interactions. Like
yeah.
I'd say like he's got more of a similar channel to somebody like Alexander Grace, where he talks about social dynamics, intersexual dynamics, but he doesn't really go much in depth in terms of like these PUA tactics, like you know.
Oh, well, he used to do that. And he's changed his grift many times. And I mean, the reality is we know that looks are the most important thing in any interaction. That includes just, being conversational. I'll bring up an example of a channel that used to be on YouTube. It disappeared. His name was Monday. Anyway, he talked to this Chad guy who happened to be legitimately autistic, like awkward, right? The guy couldn't hold a conversation worth his life, and he would just repeat story after story of how girls would just find it funny and giggle, and it didn't really matter. So even in the sort of more milquetoast, charisma on command circles, which I think he's a charlatan personally, it looks are still preeminent there. Yeah, there are all these tactics and tricks. The same thing applies. I mean, the halo effect. You know what the halo effect is, of course, right?
Yeah, it's
Uh,
when like positive attributes are
yeah,
associated to like guys or women who are better looking,
yeah.
and then
Apply for a job. Yep,
yeah,
apply for a
yeah,
job. You're smarter because you're 6'2" and you got a chiseled chin. It's just universal. I mean, looks are really the dominant factor no matter what you do. I mentioned charisma on command because it's relevant there too. And all these guys, I think, are selling just a bunch of bollocks. Um, in part because yeah, they're older. A lot of them. He's in his 30s, charisma on command, but also in part because of the reasons you cited. I mean, it's easy to do so. I do think there are a few individuals, however, that I mean, there's something that a lot of people don't think about, but the only reason people become aware of certain problems is when they have to face the problems themselves, right? Usually, if you don't have a problem, like if your computer never broke down, you have no idea how to fix it. If you never built a computer, you don't know how to do it, etc., etc. Change a tire, all these things, right? The thing I've noticed throughout my life, no matter what the problem is, this includes looks and dating, is that Chads don't understand. Like this guy you were going to debate, whatever is James Tusk. I don't know much about him, but I guess he's a Chad,
Oh,
a seven or
he's
so.
just like your standard like red pill dating coach. Like he sells
But
boot
he's a
camps and
seven, right? He's a
courses.
seven or something, right?
He's I'd say he's closer to 8.
Okay, I haven't
But
looked at him. I'll take your rating. I value your rating. So let's say he's an 8, 7, 8, whatever.
yeah, and
I
he's
mean,
like
guys,
he's got a great frame, and he's he looks tall. He looks about 6 foot or 6'1",
okay.
6'2". Like he's one of those. So he's ticking like the boxes. Like even if he is a 7 facially, like his surely the other factors that he has brings him up to
Yeah,
an SMV
sure.
of 8.
Absolutely. And so when you're in that position, you're blinded to the realities other people have to face. You don't know what it's like to be a 5'5" guy, uh, with a big nose or a recessed child line. It's totally unrelatable. So I think in some cases, some of this at least does come from just having the blinders on because it's sort of the halo effect. You only need to understand a problem if you actually face a problem, whatever the nature of that problem is, and that certainly applies to looks too. This is why some people unironically really believe, well, if these just take a shower, bro. I mean, that's a meme. It's true, but a lot of the people who say that really just think, and if they shower and dress nice, that's it. There you go. You're good to go, because that's what works for them, right? And there's some of that miscommunication there. This is why, I mean, to bring up, Chad Williamson again, or Chris Williamson, whatever, the guy who has it. Again, you should check it out because you were mentioned by name. When Hamza came up with it's not really his theory because I've talked about this, lots of people have, of, the other option for men who are, subpar will just be to sedate themselves with, endless entertainment, whatever.
So
The guy, the Chad, Chris Williamson said, I just can't imagine what that would be like. Well, Well, no fucking shit. I mean, he's at least a 7 in the face, good body, so easily an 8. He was on Love Island. He's wealthy. Of course, you can't imagine that. And I think some of that comes from, they just don't understand what's going on. And a lot of the people who critique, Black Pill, even the insults, they just don't understand what's going on. And I
Yeah, they
think
don't.
that's another element too. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people are fickle, and they would. I think what it comes down to a lot of the time is people will rather choose hope, like blindly follow hope, rather than like just basic realism and logic. Like you've seen this kind of situation happen like for millennia. Like I'm not huge on religion myself. Like I know there's probably a lot of guys who are watching this who are religious, but nothing against you. But I'm not a follower of a religion or anything like that. And in my eyes, like people just the whole foundation of that, like those ideas coming into place, was people believing in this hope that after people die, then you're going to go to a safe place and you're going to go to somewhere called heaven and it's all going to be smiles there. And I think that only came into like place. This is just my opinion, that religion was founded because people wanted that hope. It looked appealing to them, even if there was no like logical reasoning behind this like whole idea of religion actually making sense, like, or there was no evidence to suggest it is true. And I think the similar thing is happening in the dating, like sort of what's the word I'm trying to look for? So like the dating sellers market, like the whole, what people are, the people who have control over like selling the like dating products, improvement products, like people's dating life. The red pill looks appealing because it's giving that hope, even if there's very little evidence nowadays, especially of it, working a significant amount. And I think that's always been appealing to people. I wanted to talk about, unless you wanted to respond to that, I did have another point that I wanted to make about like red pill products as a whole.
Yeah, just briefly. Hope always sells because what else do you have to run on if you have no hope? So I would agree with that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's fine. We're on the same page on that then. I want to talk a little bit more about like red pill products as a whole. Like we talked about that earlier a little bit, but I didn't get much of a chance to respond. So, in my opinion, a lot of the red pill guys out there, the like garbage that they're selling is ridiculously overpriced, which in my opinion implies that it's a grift. Some of the products, like the tactical soap that Richard Cooper's selling, it's $100 for like a small package or something like that. Like you have other content creators who are selling coaching calls for like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I don't know how anyone could justify like their time is worth over $1,000 per hour, like just for a coaching call. And it's not, let's be honest, it's not really going to have much of an impact in terms of like being able to change someone's dating life. And same goes with their programs. Like a lot of courses are just sold for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And I've been called a grifter in the past. People say, "Oh, what you're selling, it's just all one big grift." But what I sell is literally $5 for the cheapest one for a rating, and then my advice and analysis is $25 in total. Like that's a good price. And bearing in mind, the company that I use it for, the platform I use, takes 20% of my earnings, and then on top of that, in the UK, the tax is quite high. It's 29%. So I lose 20%, and then I lose another 29% through tax. So I'm not really making that much money. But then these red pill guys, they're making like thousands and thousands of dollars. Like it's just flat out scamming, in my opinion. A lot of the way that they are able to sell these products, and that's why, in my opinion, the red pill for the time being will be like very much bigger than the black pill will ever be on any platform, because there's just way much more availability to be able to sell products and services through that kind of means. And even if, like, this is the point I'm trying to get to, like, even if a guy is thinking of starting like a channel or is thinking of starting a business, even if he believes in the black pill and he realizes that the dating market is very much becoming like inflexible and looks focused for guys, even if he believes that, I think a lot of people who believe that might just start a red pill channel anyway, because they see the financial benefits that are available for starting up a business in red pill rather than black pill.
Yeah, I'd largely agree with that. I mean, everyone is called a grifter. I'm called a grifter too, even though I mean, I'm not selling any product. People are free to donate or not. I just make videos. In your case, I haven't looked too much into it, but I looked at a video. I think the guy's name is Pete, the guy you don't invite to parties or something. Anyway, he said that he purchased your product, said it was quite good. That's a useful thing to get an assessment. I think you have a good knowledge of facial symmetry and just what's important. That seems to be far more useful than the other stuff. And not to bring him up again because to be honest, I don't like him very much. But Charisma on Command, I mean, that dude has his own grift going. He has a quote unquote Charisma University, unironically calls him that Charisma University, where for the full course, everything you have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, supposedly that's going to transform you into some sort of charisma guru, I guess. But yeah, I think that it's much more succinct if you just say, okay, here's your face rating, that's it, right? Versus all the other things you can do, whether it's selling charisma products or soap or whatever, financial advice. A lot of them also kind of veer into that as well, um, because beta buxing and whatever things like that. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, the fundamental issue, and I think it is. This is something that I am concerned about, especially with young men. My biggest concern is really the fate of young men because I really think that we're living in a time of a lot of unprecedented illusion. On the one hand, on the surface, it seems like things are great. All this technology, blah blah blah. But there's a lot of suffering below the surface. Especially when it comes to women-related things, depression, etc., etc. I ideally would like to find some kind of real reasonable assessment. I think that's in some sense what you're representing between totally giving up, and in some cases, some guys probably will have to, I guess, because just by default, there's going to be some percentage of guys versus buying into the sort of cult leader style endless self-improvement treadmill that never ends and doesn't even promise, in my opinion, real success. It's all just sort of it's just selling hope basically. Some kind of balance between that. Um, in order to achieve that, though, you would have to have more people on a sort of quote unquote black pill perspective and basis rather than the end. Because, as you pointed out, I agree, the red pill stuff will never end. They're basically selling different forms of hope. I mean, tactical soap, as cheesy as it is kind of hope in a box, soap in a box. So yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out myself. How can young men who are say average, what is their best thing? I mean, obviously looks maxing, sure, but given how stiff the competition is, I don't know. I've talked about geomaxing quite a bit on my channel, quite a bit, several times. I've made hundreds of videos, obviously. Um, that can be an option, but you know, as things get more and more globalized, I can give you a story about geomaxing actually. That might be useful, instrumental. Uh, I, I lived and worked in South Korea for over 2 years. This was between 2006 and 2008. And I can tell you back then, it was really easy as a Western guy to get women's attention. It was a lot. It was pretty simple. I knew, actually, I had a friend at the time from the UK. I mean, came from a poor family, was working in Tesco's, no luck. He had screwed some slags here and there, but whatever. He got there, and there's just women just throwing attention at him because he was, reasonably tall, not terrible looking, and not even that good looking, but whatever. But because of the globalized market and everything we're witnessing, I still have contacts there. The competition is a lot stiffer. It's not good enough, for example, these days just to be a average looking Western guy in South Korea, which is the Asian country I'm most familiar with, show up and you're good to go. Because through the globalized market, they know what is available, the women there. So that's not going to cut the mustard anymore, right? They have the same expectations, tall, blah, 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 as everyone else. They always did, but now it's amplified. So I think, I mean not to give you more black pill, but with the geomaxing element, as the world becomes more and more globalized and more women are plugged into social media, then even those options become more and more limited. I mean, it's going to be slow in some countries, but in a lot of countries, it's catching up. And yeah, so I'm trying to figure out a decent, I don't call it a solution, a workaround for young men that is neither delusional but also not totally giving in to absolute despair, because you don't want to end up in that position either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. I know exactly what you're talking about. I want to move on to to a couple other points here, because I feel like we might have missed a couple of things. Well, I've definitely missed a couple
Sure.
of things that you talked about at the beginning, but I forgot about them halfway through, and we moved on to other topics. So I just want to trace back to that. So the first question you asked was how I became black pilled, like how I saw through the red pill BS and ended up moving over to this corner of the spectrum. And for me personally, when I first started out in my dating life, I had some very interesting interactions, and I started off blue pilled, obviously as most people go. They think that the first exposure to dating advice people get will happen before they're even 10 years old. It will come from their parents, their the media that they're consuming, which is going to be usually Disney movies and things like that. So I was under the illusion of the blue pill at first when I first started in dating, and it didn't take me long to realise that was just all a lie, that the nice guy doesn't win. It goes a lot more in depth than that. I knew that was rubbish fairly quickly, which did save me a lot of potential embarrassment. I've heard some horror stories and I've seen some videos on the internet of some blue-pilled teenager in school who goes in with a banner to his high school crush, and he'll have he'll have written on it will you go on a date with me or something like that, and then he'll have some big performance or sing a song or just some really cringy thing like that. Those guys just they went too far with the blue pill, and I'm very certain that after they had those ordeals they realised that what they'd been taught for the first 10-15 years of their life was a complete lie. But I'd never had to go through that, thankfully. I realised fairly quickly that the blue pill was rubbish without much embarrassment. And then I moved over to the red pill, and if I'm honest, I stayed there for way too long, in my opinion, way too long. I watched all of the videos online, the content creators who spouted red pill advice, and I thought it was all about game and becoming an alpha male. You just have to say XYZ in this sequence at this time, and everything should be fairly predictable after that you'll be able to know if a girl is attracted to you. If you play your cards right, exactly how the content creator, say it, then there's no reason that you shouldn't have a success with a woman. But it took me about 2 years to realise that wasn't very accurate as well. I thought I believed it wholeheartedly at the beginning, but then after using those strategies for a good 6 months to a year, I started to have my own doubts in the system. I thought, hold on, this isn't working. This isn't getting the results that I wanted. And one of the interesting scenarios that kind of reinforced that even more was I was in a three-way interaction. And this isn't the same one I talked about in my video, the story that a lot of you guys have already heard. This is a different one. So I was in a three-way interaction with a man and a girl and and me, obviously. So there was a guy who was good looking, a girl who I found attractive, and obviously he found attractive as well, and we were all in a three-way interaction. And in situations like this wasn't just once, this happened a couple of times, I'd always try to keep track. I'd have a mental tally in my own mind. I'd be thinking, right, I've done this correctly, I've done this right, I was funny here, I've done good on this part of the conversation. This all leads to the girl having more attraction towards me. Meanwhile, for the other guy, the other good-looking guy who was in the situation as well, I'd also be keeping a tally for him. So I'd simultaneously be keeping a tally for myself and a tally for the other guy to see who was performing better. And therefore, by the end of the situation, I would know what the outcome would be. I would know whether it was appropriate for me to make a move or escalate with the girl, because I would know how well I had done leading up to that point. So it would save me potential embarrassment there. And then whilst I was adding up the tally, so I was thinking right, I did this spot on, I did this good. The red pill coaches said, if this happens, you need to respond this way, and I nailed it. I nailed nearly every single line, and I made very few mistakes. I practiced what the red pills were teaching in terms of game quite a lot. I watched all of their content, and I'd always be excited to test out what they were saying in their videos in real interactions, because I thought, this is going to give me new hope, this is going to work. And then, so by the end of this interaction, going back to the story, I would tally up and say, like, right, there's no way that the girl will pick me over him. I've clearly outperformed him. And in fact, he's actually done himself no favors during any parts of that interaction. He's like messed up here. He was cringy at this part. He failed this shit test. He's made all of these mistakes that clearly the woman shouldn't be able to see past. But then, surprise, surprise, by the end of the interaction, the girl would choose him over me. And I'd just be baffled. Like, I was starstruck at this point. I was like, how on earth has that happened? And I felt betrayed by the content creators that I was so used to watching. And I actually, like, built quite a bit of a, reliance on the beliefs that they were talking. Like, I thought that this is very trustworthy. But it just never ended up playing out. Like, what it reminds me of is, if anyone here is into boxing, I'm not so much myself, but I remember a couple years ago there was this fight between, it was, I believe, Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, and I remember everyone saying about it that, like, this Tyson Fury should have won the fight. He was like dominating all 12 rounds, but then after 12 rounds, it went to the judges, and they called it a draw. And that was despite the fact that everyone in the stadium, everyone at home watching on TV, was expecting Tyson Fury to be given the victory, but people were just gobsmacked when it was called a draw. And that sort of situation was the exact kind of situation that I felt I had in my own dating life so many times, which really put doubts in my mind of how much, like, how legitimate the ideas, the like game sort of ideas that these red pill YouTubers were teaching, how legitimate it actually was. I'm not sure if you can relate to stories such as that, but after those interactions took place, I quickly discovered the black pill. Like, I discovered Faisal LMS. He was the first black pill YouTuber I watched, and then I realized very shortly after seeing his content, this is what I've been missing. This explains all of the interactions that I've had previously. It was looks that was predicting the outcomes, not game, not all of these other external factors. Do you think you have any experiences similar to that as well?
I certainly do, but obviously I'm over twice your age, and so I mean I hate to play like the old fogey here, but this stuff didn't exist, you know. See, actually, maybe I can tell, yeah, similar stories, but really, when I was growing up, internet didn't exist. So the blue pill perspective was the only perspective that it was just sort of, what was the saying? Girls are sugar and spice and all things nice and whatever. Be a nice guy. That was what you were raised on. That was the only thing that you believed in. But where I could tell you, what I could relate to it is basically retrospectively looking back on my life in instances where I just sort of completely lost in, you could say, competition, or I mean, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I've been cheated on before. Not only, it's happened, not frequently, but it has happened. And I remember one instance, at the time, again, you're raised on the blue pill. Imagine growing up in the 80s and 90s. There's no internet. No one's telling you this stuff. You guys are very fortunate to have this wealth of information. But the one of the girls I was together with, she cheated on me. I'm 5'8". Guy was 6'3". He was on the rowing team. Like, retrospectively, just so obvious. Much better looking than I am. So a lot of the things I can relate to on that are just sort of going back to when I was young, and all these sort of aha moments when I think about, oh, that's why that didn't work, and that's why that didn't work, because there was basically no internet around. When I got online, I was already aware of a lot of this stuff, because it's so hard to relate, because you have to understand, now it just seems obvious, all these things to everyone, because you're just exposed to it 24/7. But imagine being, you're this guy thinking, this is how these things work, but there's no one else to talk to it about, right? There's no one around to talk to. You think you're crazy, actually. And that's what I did think for a long time, until I discovered certain types of content, like 10, 11 years ago, about how some of this stuff worked. But yeah, for a long time, I thought I was just insane. Because the normie response, of course, is always going to be, even to this day, just be yourself, be a nice guy, whatever. And I saw retrospectively tons of examples where that didn't work that way. Um, but it was always some, fault of your personality, or maybe you said something wrong. But I'd seen, and other examples of, I remember a guy I went to uni with years ago. He was easily an 8. I mean, the guy was just, he had to fight girls off with a stick, And I mean, it's retrospectively so obvious. But again, at that time, without the internet, at least not being as prominent, and even in the early 2000s, you just stood there thinking, you're all by yourself. And like, am I the only one that thinks this works a different way? But now I think the evidence is overwhelming, which is why I think your channel is growing and you've been successful. Because in a way, a lot of people have been compiling this evidence over years and decades. Now the young guys can benefit from it. But the relatability to me is just looking back on my life in my 20s and just realizing why I might have lost out on a chick, or why certain things happen a certain way. Well, it's because I just, in those cases, I was just sort of inferior in terms of looks, or wasn't tall enough, usually. Oftentimes there's that too. And so, yeah, and so I should point this out. I mean, the young guys are lucky in this. It's easy to take for granted. But I swear, when I was growing up, it was just blue pill fairy tales, man, nonstop. You know, true
Yeah,
love, blah blah blah. That's how we were raised. I
yeah.
didn't really become hyper aware of this stuff until my late 20s, early 30s, and like I said, I'm in my mid 40s, so it took a long time.
Well, I'm glad that I started becoming aware of this like pretty much a year ago. Well, actually a year and a half ago by now. And you made a comment that like, I was just there like nodding to my health, nodding to myself as you said it. It's like one of my favorite parts. One of my favorite parts of being blackpilled is being able to observe situations taking place and just realizing how predictable things become. Like it opens your eyes to just how like obvious everything is. You can just see what's going to happen like before it even happens. Like it's just like what as soon as I have a very like black and white view on like dating. Like I can tell, in my opinion, like very early if a girl is interested or not. Like, you just have to look through like a very like few clear signs. And as soon as I like have been able to like witness those signs, I am able to like read what's going to happen. Like even like by the end of the conversation taking place. So like just an example that I have here. Like a week ago, I was at some party and some woman that was there as well, and like she was talking to me, and like she was like giving a little bit the eyes like to me as well. And at that point I was still like in the like air. I didn't like, oh, maybe she's just being nice or whatever. But it wasn't until about 10 minutes later, like she grabbed my hand. Like this was quite late, everyone was drinking. She grabbed my hand and then like spun herself around, like she wanted me to try to like spin her around. And I just knew like from that point, oh, okay, that's all of the information I need. Like I can tell that the woman is interested in me by now. And I think guys who don't have experiences like that, or aren't like black-pilled, they don't have like these kind of experiences. They can't see these kind of signals. They're not able to accurately predict how obvious these situations are, because I think these situations are so obvious once you start to recognize them. Once you've like watched myself or your content, it just all becomes like way too predictable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, again, getting back to the point you made earlier, when you can predict these things, when it's that simple, there's not much you can do. There's not much to sell, right? It's just kind of, you're either stuck with your luck, or you're not. Um, and there's no market there. There's no money to be made. As I said, I think an interesting, if people want to sell products or whatever, or advice, I don't know, an interesting way would really accurately assess the current meta, the market, see how things actually work, and maybe make some money, but it wouldn't be as profitable as otherwise. But yeah, I will say one thing, and I think this is important. I think you've mentioned this in a few videos. I think, like I said, I haven't watched everything, but a fair bit of yours. Um, I do see normies walking around sometimes that are pretty looks matched, and the conclusion I've come to regarding these people is basically they're just not online. The people that are still, the average guys that are still getting girls, they've somehow connected with them in a way that's not online. So to the guys out there, It's obviously difficult because if you're here listening to this, it means you're probably living online like a lot of us do. But my sense is, and I talked to people too occasionally, that they meet outside in more of the traditional venues. Sure, it's still going to be worse than it used to be, but the online presence is going to make it worse. Tinder. I mean, if I were a young guy, forget that. Unless you're actually a Chad, in which case you wouldn't be listening to this in the first place. But the people I see who are actually looks match, fives with five. I mean, in the few cases I know about it, they actually didn't meet online, and then otherwise I would just guess and say, look, there's no way they met in this current online meta environment. So if you can avoid that, that might be another way of going about it. I mean, online makes everything worse. It's why things are so
Yeah,
bad, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's spot on. Like, for anyone watching this stream who is a young guy in the dating market right now, like, stay away from, especially if you're average. Like, if you're a Chad, use online dating. It's no question. Like, the path is going to be easy for you. But if you're an average guy, if you're anything below a 7, just don't ever go online. It's just gonna like cripple your self-esteem. You're never gonna get anything. Your looks match will reject you. Like, she won't even give you a chance. You won't even match with them, let alone be in the chance with getting like chancing with dates or whatever like that. Like, and I agree with you. Whenever I've seen like young looks matched couples, they've never met online. It's always like through some warm environment. Like, they either go to the same school, same work, same university, or whatever like that. And I actually talked about a similar example in my most recent video. Well, no, it wasn't my most recent one. It might have been the one before that. That women's standards, I don't know what it is about online dating, but they just seem to like exponentially increase as soon as they step onto online dating. Like, I don't know what it is about it. But that's just what happens. Maybe it's because they're being swamped with attention on there and they're getting hundreds of
No, no,
matches
that's
from the
it.
get-go. It must be that, yeah. But anyway, like, to carry on my point, like, I saw a woman who was in a club and she was getting with him, but a few days later, like, I saw the same woman swiping on Tinder, and she was swiping with like not guys on the guys she was with at the club's level, but guys above the guys that she was with at the club's level. So, like, her standards, it just makes no logical sense, because how can a person's standards, man or woman, change based on the environment that they are in? Like, I would swipe on the same people on a dating app that I would approach in real life. There's no reason that I would change my preference, unless obviously I'm trying to play the algorithm. Like, I wouldn't swipe on the best looking women on online dating apps, or even my looks match, maybe, because I know that they're going to reject me. But for the women out there, I don't see why they would have one set of standards for the people they meet in real life, and then a different set of standards, much higher standards on online dating, like at least 2-3 notches higher than what their own SMV is.
Right. Well, there are a couple of reasons for this. I mean, for one thing everyone should know, I mean, a lot of stuff I've talked about on my channel historically is about, so basically, women's biology and how they operate. And the thing about women is they're much more impressionable and malleable than men are, on average at least. There are exceptions, but and so you take a woman, you put her in a certain environment, and boom, she'll think something to some degree, oftentimes completely different from what she used to think. Um, it should be then, therefore, no surprise that in the right sort of online environment, remember, currency is, for women, women's currency is attention, right? They get more attention. That's what they think is valuable for them, and it is to a large degree. You combine these things, the fact they're more impressionable, more malleable, with the fact that they're receiving more attention, and I think it's easily conceivable. And I think it would be wrong to attribute that to, say, a conscious decision on their part, right? Women are not actively thinking, I would settle for a 5 here, but now I'm gonna. No, they're getting a lot of input from the online environment. Here's another thing. I've talked about this in a video as well. It's also a problem of choice, right? The online dating creates what's called overchoice, is the technical term.
Oh yeah, I've
When
heard about this. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
go on.
so the paradox of choice.
Yeah.
Basically, they've run experiments. I can go over the basics. The first experiment was run about 20 years ago. They started with products. It was like two tables filled with jam. They put jam on the table. One table had 6 types of jam. Other table had 20. And so they wanted to see, which table would basically sell. They were theoretically sell more jam. The table with 20 jams got a lot more attention, but the table of six jam sold a lot more. And they've replicated this with speed dating. They did some speed dating experiments in the early 2000s, where women would meet guys and it was only maybe two or three guys. And the women in these cases were interested in, they would ask them, about their job, their background, other things, right? And then they upped the number to like 10 or 20, and it just became a looks matching thing. And so the way the human brain works is when there's too much choice, things get reduced down to their simplest basic parts. So that's another reason why in an online environment where you're just getting probably hundreds and hundreds of messages from guys, if you're a girl who's at least decent looking, if not attractive, you're going to be reducing everything to the basic bits and bobs, which means in this case just looks. Whereas in a real life environment, for guys, sitting in front of you, standing in front of you, you're not necessarily just, shifting left and right, looking at all the possible guys around you, because they're going to be doing other things. They're not as visible. And so this is another reason, this paradox of choice, why, and people are also less happy with the choices they make, which also shows why relationships are fucking train wrecks today, even if you are in a relationship. But that's another story.
So I think it's called like buyer's regret, isn't it? Where
yep.
If there's a lot of choice. So say if you've got 25 options, eventually you're going to have to pick one. And once you've picked one, like what's going to be on a lot of people's minds is, oh, did I pick the right choice? Like this could be for relationships. This could be for anything. As you said, the example of jam on a table. Like if I pick one flavor of jam, as soon as I buy it, I might be thinking, oh, did I really make the right choice there? Like, even if I like it, even if I think it was high quality, I could still be having that little bit of doubt in my mind, thinking, oh, maybe one of the other flavors was better. And are you saying that that's what's occurring in relationships today as well?
I mean, it's a little bit of a different topic, but I think it's relevant if you do happen. Yeah, I absolutely. Because even if, see, this is the problem. I don't mean to, probably no one more black-pilled than I am in some respects, because even if you get through, let's say you ascend, right? You get a GF, you're getting your schlong wet, whatever. Okay. I mean, retaining her is going to be a real bitch, precisely because she's still on the lookout for something better. And it is basically buyer's regret. It's just seeing all these choices around her, especially if she's still plugged in online or spends any time online. It's going to be really, really hard to retain her. And there's no way around this. I mean, what will help, obviously, is looks. I mean, women are going to be more forgiving if you can say the most retarded thing, the hotter you are, the better. But let's say you've ascended to a 6, you finally get a GF. I mean, this is what I mean about this endless self-improvement train. Then this is where people like Rollo Tomasi come in and talk about like marriage and relationship game, like dealing with shit tests, and it never stops. In today's current meta, it's even worse because, again, the buyer's regret aspect, the paradox of choice, these are all really important salient factors, and they're always operative. It doesn't stop the minute you get a GF. I hate to break the news to a lot of guys, but it doesn't. It continues.
Yeah, I just want to chip in there because I've got a really interesting point which extends what you're saying even more. Like, if anyone who's been watching from the very beginning, you would have heard me say that like there's this phrase going around that the first 10 seconds of an interaction is black pill, the next like 10 seconds to first couple of weeks is red pill, and then after that it's all blue pill. And a lot of people misbelieve that once they get to that final stage, the blue pill stage, like it's all safe from there. They don't have to worry about anything. But as you were talking about, even once you get to the relationship level, the black pill never quite goes away. It's always going to be there because the woman is still going to be getting hit on. And in my opinion, a man is more likely to deal with these situations if he is less attractive relative to the woman that he is with. Because if so the example that you gave of a woman who gets hit on by another man who's standing next to a guy that she's in a relationship with, in my opinion, that situation is way, way more likely the less attractive the guy is compared to the woman. Because for that situation to happen, like it's only happened to me once in my life, and it's like an awful thing to go through. Like there's no way about it. Like it's very like difficult to try and deal with. And what ends for that situation to happen, two things must have happened. Number one, the guy who's approaching has seen the girl and thought that she's quite attractive. And number two, the guy has also looked at you and thought, that doesn't look quite right. Like, he looks like a weak hand. Like he doesn't look like he should be with her. Like I doubt that woman has much attraction towards him. I might as well chance it and see if I've got a chance for taking her away from the other guy. Like that says a lot. And in my opinion, that situation is way more likely to happen the less attractive the guy is, because that shows that the man is identifying who's approaching, identifying a bigger disparity between the two people's looks. And I just couldn't imagine what would be happening if a guy is like really unattractive, like a 3 out of 10, like, and somehow he's had a miracle situation where he's been able to get a relationship with a 5 out of 10 girl. Like maybe they started together with each other in school, like it was a just be first situation. I couldn't imagine how many times that girl will be getting attention and validation from other guys. She'd probably have guys messaging her on Instagram saying, "Oh, you should pick me over him. Like he's not good enough for you. Like you deserve better." Like I couldn't imagine how frequent that would be. The less attractive the guy gets, and the more attractive the woman gets.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's always going to be an uphill battle. And that exists even back in the day before the internet, but now it's been amplified maybe a thousandfold. And that's and maybe an even worse black pill. I mean, even if you're successful, and I mean, Hamza's right about something. The competition is steep. I think he's delusional about a lot of things. He's not delusional about that. Retaining your girlfriend is going to be a pain in the butt. And this is where, by the way, to bring up some of these old guard people like Rollo Tomasi come in, they talk about marriage and relationship game as sort of navigating shit tests. But there's not, in my opinion, there's not much you can do, because that's more about them testing to see psychologically if you're man enough, you're not showing weakness and blah blah blah. And that's something you should never do anyway in the presence of a woman. But yeah, as you pointed out, the sheer looks factor here. I mean, she just needs to go on any form of social media, and she's going to see unless she's really based and I don't know, like an alien, she's going to notice that there are a lot of guys out there that are better looking than you, and she might take advantage of it. I mean, I honestly, here's something. I mean, this is maybe even more black pill. In my opinion, even if you're a Chad, the best you can hope for is getting lots of sex and attention. I still think, because of what's happened with social media, relationships are so broken, so much of a train wreck, that even as a Chad, it'll still be on some level rough, because they're still going to be looking for other things, because women are constantly plugged in online. I mean,
I'm not sure how much I agree with that. Like maybe I'm a little bit more blue pilled on this topic than you are, but I think if a guy is good looking enough, he can get like a genuine relationship, like with a girl, like whether that's his looks match or like one or two notches below him, because she should, or at least I hope, know that the guy she's with is high value. She should know that like he's not to be messed with, and he also, by the definition of being a Chad, will have other options too. Maybe not as many options as the woman has. Like I'd even go as far to say that like a 5 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 woman will have way more short-term options than a Chad will, an 8 out of 10 Chad. Like just look at online dating. Like there's been dozens of experiments on this. People who have created like fake profiles of an average looking woman and a highly attractive man, and still, surprisingly, just because of the nature of online dating, the average looking woman has got more matches, more options, which therefore means like more power in the short term over the man, even though he's a Chad.
Yeah, well, maybe I should point something out, that I think one thing that's important that I've always observed, throughout my 4+ decades, is the relationships that do seem to work have some fundamental asymmetry, which is to say, for whatever reason, usually looks, although not exclusively, one party likes the other party member more, right? So in the case of Chad, let's say you're an 8, you're more likely to get a woman who's going to be loyal, faithful, blah, 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 willing to basically do whatever you want if she's a 6, right? And this is true of everyone, but especially, not many people are Chads, but the closer you get to your own looks matching, especially if you're Chad. I'm obviously not a Chad, but I've known Chads, I've talked to them. The more the more likely they're going to be picky and they're going to probably be less loyal. So I would say the asymmetry is important, how do you create an asymmetry potentially? Well, the easiest way is just be better looking than the other person, in which case they're going to be more invested in you. There are other ways. So that asymmetry is a way, once you are in a relationship, of sort of maintaining it. Someone needs to be ideally more invested in you or the relationship, not to a huge degree, because then obviously you're not even interested in the relationship, right? But that asymmetry is an important factor, and the best way of doing it is, of course, with the looks. If you're Chad, you have lots of options, and I've actually seen this effectively. I've seen Chads that were screwing sevens and eights. When they settle down, they decide to go with the six, because she's going to be more willing to sort of bend to his will and just kind of do
Yeah,
whatever he
it's more likely
wants.
to
So,
cooperate. Yeah, it just like gives the
exactly.
power in the in my opinion, like, and this applies to both men or women. Whoever has like whoever's the higher SMV will have the power in the relationship. But
Yeah.
just to caveat that a little bit, a guy will need to be like a little bit more attractive than the woman, because if you take two guys, a guy and a girl who is looks matched, the woman still has the power in that relationship, in my opinion. I wanted to like branch to another point that you mentioned about 10 minutes ago, which was, remember how we was talking about the paradox of choice, and how like the influx of women's options makes them want to like it gives them a false sense of entitlement, really. Just to summarize that, I like the study that you was referring to about speed dating. It reminded me of another study that I've heard of, which again highlights the fact that the more options a woman has in the dating market, the higher her standards will go. Because the study, it was like a guy who's attractive first rejects a woman, and then she then gets approached by a medium attractive guy, an average guy, and then, like, instead of accepting him, she rejects him as well. And in my opinion, I think that men and women are different on this particular issue, because if I was a guy, if I was completely blue pilled and I was trying to date for the first time, I would approach the highest value woman that I saw, like, just because I don't know any better. And then after I get rejected from her, I think I would have enough like common sense within me to like recalibrate myself, think, okay, so I'm not as high value as her, therefore I will have to try date a little lower. Next time I will go for the second best option or third best option, somebody who's like, just by the nature of things, you would expect her to be lower value, more on your level. But for women, like, based on this study, it's the opposite. The fact that after a woman gets rejected by an attractive guy, instead of recalibrating herself, she then has an increase in her standards. So she's less likely to settle with the average to below average looks guy. Have you heard of that study before?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
think I think I remember it. Yeah.
yeah. I think Alexander Grace covered it in one of his videos, and that just reminded me. Somebody said like way before in the live chat that like Alexander Grace is like one of the biggest YouTube grifters. I disagree with that. I don't think he's a grifter. Like, his Patreon is $5, like, and I'm a Patreon subscribed to him. Like, and in my opinion, the value that I get from consuming his Patreon content is worth more than $5. So therefore, it's a net benefit to me. It's him selling a $5 Patreon is nothing compared to like these other red pill grifters selling their soap or their courses for hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars.
Little point too. Yeah, people are wondering. I'm saying I'm not a Chad. I'm filling in for a guy who apparently bailed. I'm a completely different individual. No, I'm an average-looking guy. I'm older, and just for the record, no, I'm not a Chad.
Yeah,
But
I probably should have changed the title and thumbnail
yeah,
for that. But
when it's uploaded, obviously you can just change the title because it doesn't make any sense, right?
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, but no, I think that's true. I think Alexander Grace does decent stuff. I don't really know what his intentions are, but I also think I remember you talking to him. Did I listen to the whole? I might have. I think he's in his own little bubble. He's not online as much as other people, I get the sense, which is why he thinks that there's a lot more flexibility, perhaps, than maybe you or I think. It's possible. because I remember in that interview you did with him or discussion that he, yeah, he, he didn't seem to attribute nearly as much worth or value to looks, right? And I can't help but you're going to think that maybe if you're just staying away from certain online sources or just not really paying attention. I mean, if you, again, we've talked about this just before. If a bunch of people just aren't spending a lot of time online, they're going to be more looks max. And so maybe what he's observing, of course, is I don't know, normal people interacting without all the online stuff, right? It's possible. Uh, so I don't know what you think about that, but he seems to be less convinced that looks are as important, perhaps, as we think. So
Um, I think that he was like, you know, out of all of the guys that I've debated in the past, I think that he has like probably the closest similar alignment. Well, obviously up until the today's discussion that I've had with you, you probably align like most with my beliefs out of anyone I've had as a guest on a live stream before. But Alexander Grace, like he agreed with a fair amount of like the points that I was making regards to looks, but obviously he's a little bit more red pill leaning than myself. But obviously, like I would nowhere near put him in the same boat as like other guys I've had on the channel who are far like red pill leaning guys. And whether that's because they actually believe that, or if they just have financial intentions, I don't know. But like he's probably one of the more black pill leaning content creators I've had featured on my channel. And for anyone who's wondering, I saw one of the comments on the live chat about what content creators I like follow. I'd probably say my top 5 channels that I watch is, well, this isn't in order, but this is just like people that I consistently watch. Alexander Grace, Face and LMS, ITV, which you should know what that means, and then Darius M, who like a lot of people will just call him another red pillar, but I think he's fairly at least up until recently he's become more black pill leaning. Like he has talked a lot about in his videos that like if a woman finds a guy attractive, then she'll be more likely to let the situation let the guy get away with like certain things, like a woman won't let a low value guy get away with like not texting, flaking or something like that, but she'll be more likely to let an attractive guy get away with that.
yeah, I think I know He basically, I
Darius
mean,
M.
doesn't he just sort of he does kind of takedown videos? As far as I'm aware, I haven't seen he sort of gets sort of clips of women and does sort of takedowns. Is that
Yeah,
not
he
right?
does like if I'm honest, like I've seen this trend so much in the like manosphere, like honestly, like it's an effective strategy that he does. Like he he like collects TikTok videos and then plays it like at the start of the video, and then he like does commentary on that. And that's what most like I think most content creators on YouTube, like including myself, like as of recently, are kind of relying on. Like this is why my channel, I don't think it's ever going to run out of content, because there will always be, like, as long as TikTok's a thing, I will always have content to comment on, because some of the TikToks out there are just like ludicrous, and you're never going to have a situation, unless TikTok gets shut down or something like that, where you don't have women who are saying ludicrous beliefs or like have ridiculous opinions, like showing like the stupidity like and delusion that they have in the dating market. Like I don't think I'm ever going to run out of content like because of that. And obviously, like I still have quite a lot of original ideas that I can talk about whilst I'm analyzing those TikTok videos.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, certainly it's not my area, but yeah, I think it's definitely probably an unlimited resource potentially. I did want to maybe make one more point, and then I probably should go since this was kind of unplanned.
Yeah, I was thinking of
Um,
ending the stream like
yeah, yeah,
within the next like 5 minutes anyway. So I'm happy to like after you made this point to wrap it up in a second.
yeah. So one thing I think to point out, sort of on the red pill grift, these guys like Hamza, yeah, they're getting laid now. The problem is that this is well documented as well, especially true of women, but both men and women. I mean, the more partners you have, these women, right, that he's sleeping with, eventually, if he ever wants to settle down, he's going to have to deal with women who are effectively damaged goods. They're not going to be stable partners. And that in that instance, what is he going to do? Is he going to geomax, find some version someplace? Yeah, he's getting laid now, and guys like him can get laid. You know, the guys who can ascend slightly because they were in an average range anyway. But psychologically, you know, these women down the line, they're going to be just damaged goods. They're not going to be material for, you know, wifing or having children and families. So I think it's a bit short-sighted too. It's something else that I think a lot of guys need to bear in mind, even if they can get to that stage. You know, we talked about, you know, getting a GF, okay, fine. Then the retaining it is hard. And think about long term. You know, eventually, if you guys, as you guys get older, you may or may not want to settle down. And given how damaged women are these days, it'll and men for that record, for the I mean the ones who do have success, it's tough. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, I agree with you. Anyway, like, I'm happy to end the stream like just about now. Like, I haven't got anything else to say. I think we've covered like
Yep.
quite a broad range of topics today. I thought it was ended up being a good stream, especially
Yep.
considering you know, like I had all those problems at the start with my guest not turning up. But I'll change the title and thumbnail as soon as this
Yeah.
stream's finished, and I'll, you know, obviously, you know, if anyone watching this stream right now has thought that my guest, who's I'm really fortunate, who has stepped in to fill in today, if any of you think that the points that he's made have been concise and sound, be sure to check out his channel. I've watched a decent amount of his content. I think that what he has to say is of value. So check out Thinking-Ape. Is it still called that, or did you change it to Stardust?
Thinking-Ape.
Still
Oh
Thinking-Ape.
no, Stardust was my original like 13 years ago. Thinking-Ape is the name of the channel. It'll be easy to find. It's an ape with like a book in his hand. Yeah, easy to
Yeah,
find. Thinking-Ape, if you're interested. Yep.
yeah. Okay, so be sure to check out that channel. But other than that, like, I haven't got nothing else to say. So I'll see you guys later.
Okay. Take care.
There we
Yeah,
go.
I was happy to fill in.
If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.